But I look at you, right? Not at her.
Yes. So tell me your name.
Hilda Fogelson.
Hilda, when and where were you born?
May 29th, 1926.
And where?
In Berlin, Germany.
Tell me a little bit about your parents.
Well, my father was from Danzig. My mother was from a small town in Pomerania. It was called Schlava at the time, and now I think it's Slavno, and because now it's Polish. At that time it was German. And my father was a self-taught man. He's very smart. He was very cultural. When we came to this country, we had a chicken ranch, and he changed totally from having been a very successful businessman. He became a chicken farmer, and I think it's a funny story. He, loved opera, and he would go out on this farm and sing opera to our chickens. We used to say they were the most educated chickens. And we had a cow, and it was a small farm in what's Van Nuys, which is really part of the San Fernando Valley at that time. When we came, it was all country, all farm.
Okay, but you've jumped way ahead. I want to go back to when you were a little girl before you came to this country.
Well, my father, like I said, he had his own business.
What kind of business?
He was very cultured, I think, but he didn't have the opportunity to go to university like now would have been. And my mom came from but both parents, like my grandparents, they were in the grain business. And I don't know if it was really an arranged marriage, but they knew each other. Simon Anker and my grandfather, Hugo Gottschalk, that was the mother's son. And they got married, and my father was already older. I think he was like maybe 30 something. My mother was in her 20s. They were 9-year difference. And when he got married, or even before, he moved to Berlin, and he had a business, and that's where I grew up. And I had a very privileged childhood, I would say, until the Hitler time.
But did you have any brothers or sisters?
I have 2 older sisters. I was the youngest. And my middle sister unfortunately died very young, but my older sister still lives in Studio City where I live, maybe a mile from my house. And we're very close, and we talk every day. Because she's older, I call her. She's also not that well.
Were you close as children?
Well, she was 4 years older. We really weren't that close, because that was a big difference when you're, say, 6 and she was 10, But, and I go a little bit ahead. I had to go to Jewish school, for public school, and my sister was already in the Christian or state public school, so she was in high school, what they call the Liceo, and I just would get into it, and at that point I couldn't go anymore to public school, and Jewish school opened up.
Did she go to Jewish school with you? Did your sister go to Jewish school with you?
Later she was also kicked out of public school, and my middle sister also, but I was the first one who went to this Jewish school, and we really liked it because everybody in our situation, we all had to end up going to these, there were many, many Jewish schools. And kids came from all over to Berlin because we had the better schools, and there really wasn't opportunities in the smaller towns.
Did you have any Gentile friends?
In the beginning where I lived, our apartment house, my dad owned it, but I lived in the first floor. And this, he was a judge. He had a little girl the same age as me, and she wasn't Jewish. So she was my friend till, all of this happened. And she one day said, we always played after school, how kids do here. We had like a part of the apartment had like a, it wasn't really a garden, but a big yard we would play in. And she told me, I can't play with you. And, I was very hurt. I was only about 8, 9 years old, I guess. And I said, why not? She said, because you're Jewish. I didn't, up to that point, I didn't even know I was, I mean, I knew I was Jewish, but I wasn't like something bad.
That must have hurt.
Yeah, so that's sort of, I know I went home and I cried, and my father and mother said, that's just one girl. We know other friends here, and that, I think, was one thing. My mother and father were very supportive of us, even though they, I'm sure, were suffering, but they always said to us, things will be fine, you're going to be okay, don't worry about it, and that made you feel more secure,
Did you ever feel scared?
Did I really?
Did you feel scared at all?
Yeah, a lot of times, Once really Hitler came to power in 1933, things were very bad. And I know that I I couldn't go to a public school anymore, so we went on a train to the Jewish school. It was further out. And kids around us knew, why aren't you going to the adjacent school? So they, especially in winter, I remember they would make a snowball, they would put a rock in it, and they would try to hit us, And they would call us, you Jew, you Yid or whatever. And, I was probably scared, but I had friends. I think when something bad happens, you become closer, because you probably know German Jews were very assimilated. And all of a sudden, we were all in the same situation. And so all of a sudden, all the Jewish people, we were friends. We were close. And we would find out, this one's going to America, this one's going to South America, this one's going to, especially people in my family. Some went to South Africa, to Australia. They went wherever they could go. Of course, many went to what's Israel now, Palestine.
Did you ever wonder where you were going to go or what was going to happen to you?
Yeah, I got, especially when all of this happened to us, and I saw, the first time too, they had these Nazi parades, they're walking with the swastika flag, and if you saw that, you're supposed to do this, Heil Hitler. And I know I was walking with a cousin who was much older, and she lived across the street, sort of. And we were in the park, and we walked home, and this parade passed us, and she pulled me aside and he said, we're Jewish, we're not going to salute the flag. And I did whatever she told me, and I said, yeah, what are we going to do, She said, we're going to hide here. We did, in a doorway somewhere, and I got home, and there was this tutor that they had hired so that I would pass a test to enter the public school. It was a very difficult test. And I forgot all about him, and I told my mom, guess what? We didn't salute the Nazi flag. And she said, oh, sure you did. And then I saw that guy sitting there, and I didn't know who he was, and I said, yes, I thought we were so wonderful. And that man was very nice. He was, a professor, actually. And he could have reported me that cousin, my mom and dad, and he never said a word. So, but afterwards, my father, they set me down. They said that, like you say, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. You don't go talking about this.
How old were you then about?
At 10, well, at 9, 10. But, certain things like that. I know, then I realized, well, maybe maybe I should be more careful you started worrying what's going to happen to us. And I thought you probably know about Kristallnacht. When that happened, that was the worst thing, I think. And then
What are your memories of that day?
That was pretty terrible because we didn't know it had happened because our apartment was like on the second floor. And my father said we go to school. We didn't know, nobody. So we went to school, and I got to the Jewish school, and already going, I saw our synagogue burning because we went on an elevated train you could see. But my sister was already with me at that time, and other kids, and what's going on, Then we passed some more, and they were all burning. And then we got to school, and my principal met us, and she said, something terrible happened here, and you're not staying in school anymore today, and turn around, go home, you have to be with your families. So that's what we did. We went home, and my dad was home. He was always in his business, and he set us down, and he kind of calmed us down in some ways. I think by that time I was crying and all. And then
you must have been really scared.
Yeah, and my grandma at that time, she had moved from a small town. They thought Berlin was safer. She lived across the street.
Is this your mother or father's mother?
My mother's mother. And she came over, and my mother's two sisters, we all lived on the same street. And my father was pretty amazing, I think, because he said, this happened, and he told us what happened. Of course, we had seen some of it, but don't worry, I'm going to figure out something, and now we're going to get out of here. Well, I think he had no idea how, what. And my grandma went home, and he sent them home. And then he told us, my two sisters and me and my mom, to put on a jacket, and we're going on the streetcar that went all the way around Berlin. And you're going to see with your own eyes what happened, but just sit quietly and don't, call attention to you or say this is terrible or whatever. And he told us to remember it. If you ever get out, we want you to tell the world what happened here, because people are not going to believe it.
What was that like for you?
That was pretty horrible. So we went, in this streetcar, and I couldn't believe it. We lived in sort of a Jewish neighborhood, which I really didn't know till I went back to Berlin, because they have these Stolpersteine now, these plaques where Jews lived. And I noticed when I went back, almost every other house had one of them. So there were a lot of Jews, obviously. But I was talking to my sister. She didn't know either. We lived in a Jewish neighborhood. Anyway, we saw the synagogue burning from the streetcar. And then we came to the Berlin is really a beautiful city. It's a beautiful city again. But these great big department stores with glass windows, like you would say Macy's here. The windows were all broken. It was all glass all over the place. So then when we got home, my father said, up to that point, he was, he had fought in World War I. He was a lieutenant. he had a decoration with the Iron Cross, which was one of the highest honors you can have in the war. He was more German than he was Jewish.
Mm-hmm.
So but that kind of woke him up. And of course, all of us, I don't want to live here anymore, especially my older sister. She said, I want to go to, we call it Palestine. And my father said, no, because young people did that. No, we all go, if you go, we all go together. Well, that was very difficult. So we heard about that kinder transport after that. And they signed me up and my sisters.
Do you want to explain a little bit about what kinder transport is?
Well, it was sponsored by the British, and I think I have to thank my whole life the British people. They sponsored 10,000 children. You did have to find somebody in England who would sponsor you, and it was £50, which about $150. Well, that was a lot in those days, but we had my father's brother, Uncle Leo, and he sponsored my two sisters and me, also the ones you just interviewed.
He was living in...
He was in England already.
Uh-huh.
And so that's, if you found a sponsor, you were put on a list, and then as your name came up, you were able to, get on this. But you had to leave without your parents. That was a requirement. And you could be like 2 or 3 years old, but you had to be toilet trained. Mm-hmm. And the oldest could be 17. My sister Eva was just 17. And my other sister was 15 and I was 13. So we were pretty excited, we were going to get out of here. And all you could take is one suitcase. You could not take any valuables. You couldn't take, say a valuable camera or anything like that. And no money. And so, we waited, and more and more kids I knew left, many on the kinder transport, like Heinz and Elsa left.
They left before you?
Before us. And I thought, well, I know I had finally our name came up. And just before that, my dad, especially my mother, that was her mother, said we had to go across the street and say goodbye to that grandmother. She was a wonderful lady, like Julia was to have a grandmother, and we were close to her, and I know she cried, and she said to me, I just want you to be a good girl. I mean, she didn't really, what's happening to her. Unfortunately, she died in a camp. Mm-hmm. But
when you left, did you think you would see her again?
I always thought maybe, but I wasn't sure. But I was sure I would see my mom and dad again, because we had all this family, in the USA already. But I also wasn't sure. I was in between, like.
I
wanted to know that, yeah. But my sister Eva, she's optimistic. She said, I knew we would see him again. I don't know what's wrong with you, she tells me. But I really didn't think I would, because...
That must have been so scary.
It was a very difficult thing, because those Nazis did not want Germans to see what was happening. So there are different platforms. The first platform were all the parents, and the second platform was the train with the kids, so that the German population didn't see, because there were little kids crying and parents crying,
Were you crying?
I don't think my folks, they were very good. They didn't cry.
What about you?
I think I did cry, but I did feel secure because my two sisters, but and toward almost we were getting on this train, a man came up with a very little kid, maybe 3 years old, and he said that we were related to him, some distant cousin from Danzig, and this is his little girl. And my sister, who was all of 17, we weren't very sophisticated. He said, you watch out for her like with your sisters. She's going with you. We never saw her before, we didn't know who she was. But we were very nice, we shoved her along. But she's the one. She never stopped crying till we got to England.
How long was the trip on the train?
It wasn't that long, and then, from Berlin to, we went to Bremen, which, on the sea, North Sea, and I think we even stayed a night. They put us up there somewhere, and then we only got on the ship the next day. And by that time, kids were feeling, it's like a big adventure in some ways, but there was also a lot of crying, and a lot of those kids, never saw their parents again. I'm lucky I did.
And when you got to England?
Yeah, there was my two cousins, Charlotte, who lives, I think she's 96, something like that. No, yeah, that age. She lives in London to this day. Elsie knows her. And she was there. She was all of probably in her 20s. And a boy cousin, Rudy, who came from Danzig and lived in was going to the university, I think. Those two my uncle sent to pick us up. And, we really didn't know them because they lived in Danzig, we lived in Berlin. And, the very bad thing I remember is before we got off the train, these Nazis came on the train and checked our baggage. They were like, to me, they were 6
Very
feet tall with, those boots they wore and their brown uniform. And my mother had packed as much as possible in this one suitcase, very tight. They took everything and threw it on the ground. And here, I was really a spoiled kid, I never did much in the house at home. Here, okay, now repack your suitcase, So I know my sister Eva did help me, and her name was Dodie. Her name was Dorothy, really, but we called her Dodie. She was kind of doing it herself. And, yeah, but that was, they really, why couldn't they just let us go, But they try to make it as awful as possible.
Now you're in England. What happens then?
Well, then we got to England finally, and we stayed with that uncle Leo, and he had 3 children, and he had already gotten out Heinz and Elde, so he said to us, I have 3 kids myself. I can't take care of you, but I can put you in this boarding school. And my sister was too old, Eva. Well, she could have, but he decided she should go to work. But he was nice. My sister told me later he took her to different places and said, if you don't like it, you don't have to stay there. We'll find something else. But his wife, they just couldn't take care of us. We had 3 kids, now 3 more. It's a little much. So my middle sister and I, a few days later, he sent us to the boarding school, which was pretty horrible. And my sister Dodie went to the boys' school because she was too old for the girls' school. And but she lived with, like we would say, the principal, the director, and but went to classes with the boys. But I had to be with all the girls.
You said it was pretty horrible. How?
Well, first of all, we had to talk English. I didn't know a word of English. Well, maybe I knew thank you or something. And then we had to eat this horrible breakfast, what they call porridge. But when it's made good, it's, like oatmeal, it's very good. And with raisins, and you put cream and sugar on it. They gave it like a clump of this oatmeal. And they said, if you don't eat it, you can't write a letter home to your folks. So my sister Dodie was pretty smart. She said, you put it in a handkerchief, you go to the toilet, and you flush it down the toilet. That's what I did. And then...
You must have been hungry, though.
Yeah, it was really... and then they made us, because I was Christian. They're all state schools. They're owned by the state. So but also by the Church of England. So you had to say these stupid prayers, scripture they call it. I didn't know what I was reading, what it meant. And here I'm supposed to memorize this. Every morning you had to memorize about a paragraph. And I finally could do it. I don't know what I was saying. But if you didn't do that, there was some other punishment.
Did you know any of the girls in the school?
Just Elsa, my cousin, was there. But she had been there a few months, and she acted like she knew everything. And she was probably afraid too to, talk German to me. We weren't allowed to do that. And, but there were some nice girls. A lot of them were refugees like us. I think the school was pretty cheap, and a lot of them got to go there. But
how long did you stay in the school?
Not that long, and then this was in 39. The war started September 39 in Europe, and pretty soon after that, that school had to be evacuated. And then I was not in any school. Oh, by that time, my mom and dad had come to England. And so I went and lived with them, but they were in London, and it was the Blitz already, too dangerous. So, and my sister Eva worked for this, we call him a vicar, it's a minister, and he was willing to take me also. So I went to live there. He had a farm besides being the minister. It was a very nice place, and they were very good to me. My father had to pay a little money for me, and he had other relatives. They all left London and moved to this farm, and I think they were really amazing people.
How was it for you leaving your parents again?
Well, that was okay, it was just a short time, and I was actually happy. And then and they came to the boarding school at first, which was on Broadstairs, and like every afternoon then, as soon as they came, I could go and visit my mom and dad. And my mother didn't have much money at all, but she would make wonderful sandwiches compared to the
porridge.
Horrible food. I don't even know if but it was just so much nice. And it was more what I was used to. So that was really nice.
Any particular stories that pop out from your memory from that time? Anything you would want your grandchildren to know?
Well, I think it shows that you can conquer everything. You might feel this is the worst thing that's happening to you, but don't let it get you down, you know. You gotta keep going. And I think that's what I learned. I think I became pretty successful. I have had a wonderful husband, 3 great sons, and 6 grandchildren, and they're all, unfortunately one has some learning disability, but she does the best she can. And I think that, and also that one should not be prejudiced. I think that's one of the main things, that just because, well, like we were Jewish, that we were terrible, that's, not true. And I taught here in the inner city in a black school, and my best friend that I walk with now, she's black. I feel that I want them to be tolerant, that, and if they see somebody suffering, they should help them. And I think, like my oldest son is a psychiatrist. I think he does help people, in his way. Mm-hmm. Of course, he makes lots of money doing that, but...
You're really talking about the strength of the human spirit and also accepting differences.
That's exactly right, yeah.
How did you meet your husband?
Oh, we were both at... I had just finished UCLA, and he was a grad
let's
student.
Go back. How did you get to the United States? You were in England. You jumped ahead for me.
Well, we came on a ship, and that was during the war, So that was a very exciting trip, I must say. The whole Atlantic Ocean was mined, and so we, like if you go from England to New York, would be a straight line, but that's where all the mines were. So what they did, they directed the ship going north.
How did you get on the ship in the first place, though? I know, wasn't it difficult to get passports to the United States?
Well, my father was under the Danzig quota, and he was not German. It was really kind of like German, but it had its own government. It was a free city of Danzig. And we had a Danziger passport. We were not Germans. So the quota was the German quota was big, Polish.
I see.
So we were able, much easier to get out. But my father, the night before, somebody warned him, a police captain he knew in Berlin. My father was quite a character. He knew a lot of people. And this police captain came to their house. I was already in England, and said, tomorrow we're going to come and take your passport away, and then you'll never get out. Like my dad knew this guy. Mm-hmm. And if I were you, I'd take your wife. Don't take any stuff, just a suitcase. And take the whatever train or plane or whatever you can get out of here. My father did that. He went to the airport. He got a plane to Denmark, and that was, the last plane possible. And I looked like him. He looked Jewish, And when he got on the plane, they asked him, "Are you Jewish?" And he said no. And my mother really didn't. She was blue-eyed and light hair, and but they did totally search her. She always told me how horrible that was. They were not open sexually,
right.
So that's one thing. Then they got out, on that plane, and then they were in Denmark, where we had relatives. Their name was Kaufman, and they were able to stay with them, and then they finally were able to get to England, and then we were there, and then we were all together.
And then you got on the boat.
Then we got to the boat to the United States, and
how long did the trip take?
That took an awful long time, 2 weeks. Now you can cross the ocean in 4 days, I believe.
But you're not crossing mines now.
No, no, and you can go direct. But the ship was a cargo boat. It was in a convoy. There were about 60 ships. There were two destroyers in the beginning, airplanes above us, and because it was wartime.
Mm-hmm.
And
What year was this?
that was 1940. And there was another couple on the ship. They were from Poland. They were younger people, I remember. And then there were about 60 Dutch sailors. They were going somewhere in the Bahamas, somewhere, to be trained to be better sailors, and then they would fight in World War II. So that was all the people on the ship, you know.
Mm.
Oh, and we did see a lot of ships go like this. They sunk. And what they also did was they put me and my mom in one life station, my sister in another one, my father, you know. Why? In case we sink, we wouldn't all die maybe. Somebody would be safe. But I'll never forget when we got to Boston, the captain had a religious service, and he said, we want to thank God, you know, that we made it across. And now this poor guy, he was going back with armaments for Europe.
Mm.
And you know, we all had this, it was not Christian, so just thanking God that we made it. And, you know, that really struck me, wow, you know, I made it, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And then my father, like I told you, was quite a character. Okay, we're going to see the United States. Well, we just wanted to get to Los Angeles, especially my mother. She was so exhausted, you know. I mean,
How did you know from Los Angeles? Where did you
because
have
the
family there?
Ankers were here already.
I see.
So we got on this Greyhound bus, and he said, "You're going to see the United States. You might never see this again." You know, he figured we had no money, and I guess my uncle sent us money for the ticket.